you, and we look forward to getting drunk with you. Because this is not only a serious Sideshow Hall of Fame, it's also a drinking contest. But before we get there, it is my job to gavel the 2019 Congress of Curious People into session. The first order of business is to ask for a show of hands. Who is not drinking tonight? Show of hands. I see one person, two people. Three people, good. One of you, I hope, will volunteer to be the secretary tonight and take notes, because the rest of us usually wake up the next day and have no memory of what happened. So who's going to volunteer to keep track? Norman?
Norman. No. Norman told us that he wants to do this. No, he didn't.
Who put their hands up before who's not drinking? And you're going to write down 5 names. It's not a hard job.
So you have to count also?
Okay. So the first note I want you to take is old business, that from the 2018 class of the Congress of Curious People's Hall of Fame, Captain James, help me out here. I don't speak Greek. Captain Constantinus's name is supposed to be up there on the wall, and it was not put up yet. That's note number 1.
Yeah, really.
That's old business taken care of. We're moving right along because we want to get to drinking. But the first part of Congress, we try and bring in a serious sideshow scholar to give a keynote address. I'm sorry we don't have anyone like that, but James Taylor is here. Ladies and gentlemen, the publisher of Shocked and Amazed On and Off the Midway, and the guy who really does know everything. Please give it up for James Taylor and the keynote address.
First, years ago, and you'll hear Ward Hall's name mentioned, I'm sure, a million times tonight. His partner, Chris, whom I love dearly. Chris is a piece of work. In fact, if you look up piece of work in the dictionary, it's a picture of Chris. And his line to me years ago was, always hold up the pitch item, always hold up the pitch item. So yeah, these are all for sale for those of you who don't have any, or don't have them all. Go out there and buy every goddamn copy in the damn store out here. Do it! Do it!
I own all of them.
See, there's got to be one in every house. Anyway, I'm going to take this off because it's hot as hell up here. That's damn footlights. I'm in the limelight now. Anyway, it's unheralded as a title for this spiel tonight, but I've kind of unofficially called it my Sideshow Mammas, which implies absolutely nothing sexual. It's literally the two ladies who were as much as mom to me in the business. This is going to be a really rough kind of night for me in a lot of ways. It's been a lot of show folk that I knew and was friends with in the past couple of years, past year and a half or so, who've sort of cashed in, and it's been a little rough. So I'll try to maintain as best I'm able. But in any event, the two people I'd like to talk about are Jeanie Tomaini, billed in her day as the world's only living half girl, and Pecilla Bejano, who was billed as the monkey girl. And I'd like to I'll talk about how I first met each of them, and then I can get the hell off the stage and we can start getting into serious boozing. But in any event, when I first got, there's a little bit of backstory. When I first got involved in this in the very early 90s, my mentor in the business, a gentleman by the name of Jerry Farrow, who was dating my mother at the time, my father having passed away a couple of years prior, I got to a point with him where I thought he was the most outrageously, hysterically funny human being I'd ever met in my life. And he'd been in the carnival business forever. I mean, since he was in his early teens, he'd running pony rides and all this other stuff. And I got to a point with him where I was like, well, gee, Jerry, where's the books on this stuff? Because I'm a writer, right? So I gotta look for books. And meanwhile, the book is standing in front of me telling me these stories. And he looks at me and he says, well, you're a writer, write your own damn book. I was like, duh, right? So I got to have a carnival guy tell me how to run my life. And he sure did. So I jumped the plane, I fly my old butt down there to Gibsonton, Florida, Gibtown, Showtown, USA. And I'm going in green because, I mean, my background at that point in time was as a publisher, as an editor, and as a writer of poetry and high-end lit, and that's what we published out of my publishing house. And I didn't know squat about how to interview people or anything else. I'd never really hung out on carnivals. I had no carnival and circus history at all in my background. And so Jared's line to me was, anybody you talk to down there, you're going to talk to them for a couple of minutes. They're going to know you're legit and they'll tell you anything. I was like, well, then that's fine. Until I got to Gibsonton. And I go rolling into the club. Now, as a writer and a publisher, I know how to do this, right? So I sent a letter down to the International Independent Showmen's Association, the club, as it is known colloquially among all the show people. And I sent a letter down there and said, look, this is the project, this is how I want to proceed with it, and here's the people I'd really like to intersect with on my first trip there. And I go into the club during the trade show, which they call the extravaganza, which it pretty much is. It's where all the carnival people turn out to buy their rides, their joints, and just all the plush. And anything connected to the carnival, you can buy it at the extravaganza at frighteningly cheap prices, given how much you got to spend at the games to get that stuff. That's why they call it slum. But anyway, so I go back into the office. I'm like, oh, well, hey, I'm that guy who, and there's my letter. Thumbtacked on that goddamn bulletin board for anybody who happened to want to go into the office instead of walking right past the office to go to the bar. And I knew damn well not a soul alive had ever seen that letter outside the people who opened that envelope. And I'm like, oh, crap, this is going to get me nowhere, right? It's a great way to start the book. So I'm talking to him behind the counter. I was like, what I had to do to sort of, they were like, well, why don't you go over to the museum and talk to George? And George Saunders, I should be charitable to the guy because he's dead. He was a pain in the ass. But I'm being charitable here. They eventually got rid of George. Unfortunately, sort of found out he was selling things donated to the museum at flea markets. But that's okay. You have to stay true to the tradition, I suppose. And so anyway, so he's pointing out different things in this curmudgeon-y kind of fashion. I had the tape recorder going, and he's like, turn that off. I was like, he says, put that away. I was like, no problem. Left it running, put it in my pocket of my jacket, and recorded his whole spiel to me about the history of the business, which was pretty spot on, really nice stuff. And I said, well, look, I'm interested in connecting to people. And he says, you got to talk to, and he gave me a list. I thought, well, this is the last thing in the world I expected to get out of this old bird, and this whole list of these people, contact information, everything. It's all being given to me begrudgingly, but he's giving it to me. And so one of the first people he told me I needed to hit up was Jeanie Tomaini, the world's only living half girl, who at this point in time is already in her late 70s, early 80s, and was much off the Midway, hadn't been in the business for years. But she's right across the road, right across 41, the highway, right across the highway from the Showman's Club. I was like, oh, okay, I can find Giant's Camp. It's like I can see it from here. So I figured, okay, I'll call her first. Now this is before, like everybody with cell phones, smartphones, and every damn thing else. So I go to the payphone, and I call her, and I get this woman's voice on the phone, and it's her daughter, Judy Rock. And I was like, well, I need to speak to Jeanie Tomaini. She says, just hold on. And this little voice gets on the phone, and she says, we're back and forth. And I said, well, look, Miss Tomaini, I'd really like to come by and interview you. I've got this project, Shocked and Amazed, which at that time was planned to be a book instead of the journal. And I said, you know, I want to talk to you about that. She goes, oh, that'd be great. She says, would you want to come by tomorrow at either 8 or 10? And I'm like, 8 or 10? I'm not sure I understand the times. I'll come whenever you want me to come, but and she says, oh, well, CNN is going to come by to interview me tomorrow at 9, and I didn't want it to interfere with you. And I was like, I got a great idea. Why don't I come by at 8? You can do your bit with CNN at 9, and then we can talk about that afterwards above and beyond everything else. She's like, oh, that would be great. Why don't you do that? So my ass goes rolling over there at 8 o'clock in the morning. And she's there by herself, and Judy finally comes in, her daughter finally comes in a little while later. They're at the bait shop, which they had set up there, because she and her husband, Al Tomaini, the American giant, you know, like 7.5, 8 foot tall, all the whole mess. And, you know, meanwhile, Jeannie's like here, she doesn't have any legs. And so, yeah, needless to say, they were billed as the world's strangest married couple among 9,457 other strangest married couples on the Carnival Midway and probably off the Midway as well. I've been in those relationships. But anyway, I was like, so, you know, CNN's going to be rolling. She's like, you know, those stinkers called me and they called the whole thing off. And I was like, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. We'll talk anyway. So she and I are talking and cutting up jackpots. For those of you who don't know the term, you know, it's like generals bullshit the troops. Well, Carnival people cut up jackpots. Yeah, you know, they swap lies. I was talking to Dick earlier. And I said, you know, the essence of every jackpot, regardless whether it includes the lying or not, they all end with the idea of, and we lived. Because nobody wants to pay to hear about your happiness. I mean, screw that, you know? They want to hear all the disastrous things that you barely made it out alive from. That's what jackpots are. So she and I are cutting it up. We're like telling each other all these crazy stories. And finally, I'm fetching up, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours into it, and I'm ready to blow up. I mean, I had to go to the bathroom so damn bad. I was ready to cry. So I look at her and I'm like, Jeannie, I'm really sorry, but you know, wherever the bathroom is in here, I really need to use it. And she looks at me and she gets this little grin on and she goes, why don't you just cross your legs? Oh. And I looked at her and I'm like, you're a goddamn ticket, you are, you know? But anyway, so yeah, that was my first day with Jeanie Tomaini, and I ended up spending the next extravaganza the next year. I ended up spending an entire week with her, cataloging all of her photographic images and identifying all the people in them, and listening to her tell me stories about the people she knew, which was just miraculous. Well, but anyway, so that was my first day with Jeanie, and it turned into a lot of other days when, yeah, really, I mean, if I needed to sort of talk to Mom, I could always call her and you know, talk to her for a while about what she was doing, what was going on in her life. Finally, when she passed away, the Giants camp folded up its tent, blew away within a couple of years, and it's all gone now. If you go down now and you go over the Alafaya River Bridge on 41, if you look to the right, there's a black steel fence that I can't reach up that high. The people who bought it was Cargill, the fertilizer plant across the Alafaya River, and they'd wanted Jeanie and all the Carnival people gone forever. They only managed to get rid of Jeanie, I guess. But right now it's sort of scorched earth, that property right now. It's grass. They preserved one of the cabins because they used to have a campground there. She and Al Tomaini created a campground. And the Giants Camp Restaurant, which was a wonderful place to go because it was open 24/7. It was a wonderful place to go after the bars closed. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Florida code, it's 3 a.m. And so yeah, we'd all sort of wrap it up at Showtown Bar and go rolling in the Giants Camp to eat breakfast and then be up at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, which is totally wrong. But it's all gone now anyway. But Volume 2 of Shocked and Amazed, because I'd worked on Volume 1 when I was getting together with Jeanie in that first year, and put that one out. And then Volume 2, which had Jeanie Tomaini on the front cover. It's out of print now, if you can find it. Long may you wave. I don't get any residuals from that crap, which really pisses me off. God, the money some of these volumes are going for, they're sold out. in volume 2, which had Jeanie on the front cover, one of the people I'd had on that list that was posted on the bulletin board at the Showman's Club, one of the people on that list was Pecilla Bejano, the Monkey Girl. Now I know that her husband, Emmett, had passed away a few years before. He was billed as the Alligator Man, the Alligator Boy. And they were also a world's strangest married couple. And not unlike Jeanie and Al, they stayed together until, you know, one of the other of them died. Al Tomaini died back in the 60s and Jeanie never remarried. Emmett died a few years before I met Pecilla in 94, I guess it were, 95 it would have been, I guess. And she never remarried after Emmett died. But Pecilla was a different order of magnitude than Jeanie. Jeanie was just, you know, I never met anybody in the carnival business that didn't just call her a jewel, and she really was. She was a great lady. Pecilla was another thing entirely. Pecilla had been through the business, and more or less she was done with it. And I couldn't have sworn to it, but I thought I might be able to get her attention because she was on that list of people I wanted to find and connect with. When I published volume 2, I published her picture along with a couple of paragraphs in the first section of every volume Shocked and Amazed. It's called Cutting Up Jackpots. And I picture her as a pitch card. Anybody could have published. It's been published a million times. It's essentially the inspiration. I mean, it's the inspiration for that picture. It's her sort of up there in the tree in Florida, you know, kind of with the bathing suit on. And I had a couple of paragraphs talking about how she really didn't make any moves to interact with anybody outside the business. And what I said was, well, you know, it's understandable because the people who've been in the business their whole lives, they've been in front of this their whole damn life. And it gets old after a while. I mean, however much people talk about, you know, performers going out horizontal and dying, you know, and you know, they do their last show, walk off stage and drop on stage, or like Melvin Burkhart did, you know, the patron saint of almost all the younger performers nowadays. The original Human Blockhead, he does his last show in New York City a month after 9/11, gets on the plane, goes home and dies. I mean, he was dead within 3 weeks after he got home, so he, as much as possible, he went out horizontal just like he said he would. So I'm writing that kind of stuff about Pecilla. You know, I get it. I haven't met her, but I get it. Well, didn't take long for word to get to Pecilla that somebody had printed her picture without getting her permission. Now, legally, I didn't need it, but that wasn't the point. And I certainly wasn't going to tell her that the reason I ran that picture was hoping she'd sort of get up on her hind legs and sort of want to smack me. So we're down there. I've got volume 2 down there. It's got her picture. It's got a couple of paragraphs about it. And at that point in time, my late partner, Kathleen Codger, was with me. We were down there in the museum. And you know, it's a couple of people kicking around in there. It's another year with the extravaganza of the trade show, and so there's people around. There's a mob scene everywhere. And we're in the museum, and you know, people are milling around. And George, the museum guy, he's still there at this point. Phone rings. He goes, "Hello, yeah. Does anybody want to give Pecilla a ride to the club tomorrow?" And Kathleen and I were like, you know, we're like, "Yo, no problemo." Well, everybody else is kind of like doing this. They're sort of like, you know, slinking away. And I said, "What the hell's with this shit, right? I mean, what's this?" So we agree to meet her. I get her on the phone, and I'm talking with her. I don't realize till later, she actually thinks I'm another James. Which was fortunate, I suppose. In the intervening 24 hours, she realized I wasn't the James she thought I was, but that was okay. And I said, "Oh, well, you know, where are you? You know, need to get up there." And she's way to hell. She's way to hell north of Tampa. And so I was like, "Oh, it's not a problem. You know, we'll come up and we'll get you." So I said, oh, and by the way, you know, I'd heard that you'd shaved, you know, that she was like hair from here down. There's people who have that syndrome, who have hirsutism, where they're like just covered in hair. From what I understand of the syndrome, it manifests in two different ways. One of which is you're born with infantile hair that you keep, and it's all over you, and you keep it your whole life. And that's what the Mexican wolf boys are. It's like real silky sort of stuff. And you see the hairy people of Burma, the picture from the 19th century. That's what they have. But there have only been 3 performers in history going back into the middle 1800s, mid 1800s, who had Priscilla's condition, which is you're born with adult hair, and it's like steel wool, and it's everywhere. And in fact, when we finally met her, I mean, it was like, her hair looked impenetrable, how much hair she had. And the hair on her hands was 3 times what I've got on mine. And talking to her on the phone in the museum, and I said, so I heard you shave. And you know, you got rid of the facial hair, and she was like, show's over. And I was like, okay, no problem. So I didn't come here to see you haired up. I mean, if you got it or you don't, I don't care. I want the jackpots. I want the stories about you doing the business all those years. So we shag on up north of Tampa the next day, and she told us to pull in and call her from the convenience store that was the end of her block. Now, from the end of her block to her house was probably here to Surf Avenue. I mean, it was nothing. I mean, there was no, but she wanted us to call. So we pull in the convenience store, call her from Pecilla. We're up here at the convenience joint you told us to call from. We should be down there in a couple minutes. Oh, okay, can you just give me about 5 minutes? I was like, okay. So, you know, like hang out for a couple minutes, drive down, and it's like right there. Now, her neighborhood was these McMansions, right? I mean, seriously. Schwarzkopf, for those of you who remember the name, for those of you warheads in here, huge mansions. And there's her beat to shit little single wide, moldering into the property in between all, because everybody's been buying it up. They're not getting her property. She worked years to get, she's not giving this, but she and Emmett paid hard money for this property. No, you're not getting this, right? And there's goats everywhere, and little dogs, and shit's running around making all this noise. And we pulled up out front, and she had told us just pull up out front and park. And she's like, and I'll be out. It's like, okay, well, whatever. So we pull up and we stop, and we're sitting there, and we're sitting there, and we're sitting there, and finally, from the next house up, we see this young woman walking down, and she's probably in her 30s, I guess. And she's kind of walking down toward us. Kathleen and I are sitting there, and we're like, what the hell is this, right? She's like, she finally gets up to the van. She goes, oh, you all are here to see Miss Pecilla, right? I was like, yeah. And she's like, oh, well, she really likes to have pictures. She loves pictures. And she wants to have a picture of the 2 of you. And I'm like, do tell. I'm like, no problem. I was, Kathleen, you got a problem? She, you, right? She takes our picture. And then goes, oh, this will be great. I'll make sure that Miss Pecilla gets this later. And we were like, yeah, I bet you will, especially if, oh, I don't know, we kidnap her or something, right? Because, I mean, it's like, that's her upbringing. I mean, her upbringing is people are going to screw with her. That's what it's about. And I looked at Kathleen, she looked at me, and we were like, yeah, you know, this is what it is. So about that time, out of the house, after she walks away, here comes Pecilla, and she's like about this tall, and she's sort of like doing one of these out through the yard. And the dogs are jumping, and the goats are all around, and all this other crap. And finally she gets up there, and she's all dressed to go to the club, right? Now, I had been told a couple of things about Pecilla, not the least of which was that she and her late husband Emmett were drunks. And I'm like, okay, whatever. She comes out, she gets, you know, we get her in the van, and she's like, you did that book, didn't you? And I was like, oh yeah, I did. And I was like, I got a copy of it for you if you want to see it. And she's like, yeah, I'd really like that. Any of you all familiar with a book called In Search of the Monkey Girl? It's a photo book, gorgeous photo book. Randall Levinson did it. Randall has a problem. And the problem with Randall is he sort of didn't meet some of the people halfway. And Pecilla and Emmett were two of those people. Because if you wanted to take their picture, put it there. Put the money there, because that's what it takes you. That's what it's going to get you. You got money. And Randall wasn't doing that. Randall just showed up, took pictures. So in that entire book, there's one picture of Emmett and Pecilla, and it's that lineup. It's everybody in the goddamn show, and there they are, them little faces, stuck in the middle with everybody else, which I'm sure they allowed under duress, frankly. But everybody else, big pictures, gorgeous pictures. Randall's an amazing photographer, but he didn't meet him halfway. So I guess he got his licks in by titling the book, Inserting a Monkey Girl. But anyway, so I gave her a copy of the book, and she was, you know, as happy as she could have been with it, which wasn't very at that point. So we get her down to the club, and first thing I do, I say, "Well, Pecilla, you know, you want to sit down? What you want to do?" She says, "Yeah, we'll go into the restaurant, which is a cafeteria side of the club, and a lot of cafeteria tables, like the whole length of the joint, all around it, the whole length and the whole circumference of that room are all these 8x10s from like the golden age of the shows. I mean, it's amazing. All the pictures are just gorgeous. And so I go in and I said, "Well, you know, do you want a beer or anything?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah. Can you give me a beer?" So I went and get her a beer. And we're sitting there, and Kathleen and Pecilla and I are talking. And about 45 minutes or so, hour into it, she's about halfway through the damn beer. And that's it. And I was like, are you okay with that? And she says, "Yeah, it's kind of warm now." I said, "Well, you want me to get you another one?" She's like, "Oh, yeah, that'd be great." Tossed that one, got her another one. She drinks about this much. I was like, "Well, this is a hell of a goddamn drunk. Christ, I'm a drunk, you know? I mean, this woman's not a drunk." And so I'm like, okay. And we you know, like we're cutting it all up and talking, and people are like, and the whole day people are coming up to her. And you can tell from the affect, they might be carnival people, but that's the star. I mean, that's the person you need to be next to sort of get your picture taken with, which she'd allow. She'd allow that. People in the club, she'd go with that. But it was like everybody trying to get that to rub off on them. So as we're getting ready to leave, it was like, "Well, you know, you want to stop in the museum? You know, go over there and cut up some jackpots with the people over there." And we're over there sitting in the museum, and we were over there, I don't know, 45 minutes, an hour or so. And it's pretty clear she's kind of getting toward the end. She's kind of getting tired. And this kid comes in, and he's obviously with it. I mean, he's in the business to the extent that he couldn't have been there at the club unless he was, you know, a member of the club or one of the kids from one of the families in the club. So basically, he's a carnival kid. And he sees her sitting there, and he sees me and Kathleen standing next to her, and suddenly it dawns on him, this is somebody. I don't have a goddamn clue who it is, but this is somebody. So somebody behind the counter at the little store there in the front of the museum must have told him, "Oh, well, that's, you know, Pecilla. She was the monkey girl in her day, and she's in this book, and blah, blah, blah." And he grabbed a copy of that book after he paid for it, and he turns around and goes, "Would you sign my book?" And she looked right through that kid. She looked at him and she goes, "Are you a jointy? Meaning, do you work the joints instead of work the shows?" And he looks at her and he goes, "Huh?" And she says, "Are you with it?" And he was like, "Huh?" She looked at him and she was like, "I'm done signing autographs today. We got the fuck out of there." And I'm like, okay. So we're heading back to her house. And I knew the way back. It wasn't that goddamn complicated. And, you know, make a left, make a right, go up here, make another left. And she says, "Oh, you make a left here." I'm like, okay, sure. I'm not, this is not your street, but yeah, okay. And sure enough, quarter mile up the road, big grocery store, right? And I'm like, she's like, "Oh, can we stop here?" And I'm like, "Yes, but it's not a problem, Pecilla, it's fine." That's where she wanted to go anyway. But God forbid she asked. Everything's got to be a work. Everything's got to be maneuvered. Everything's got to be manipulated, because unless you do that, nobody's going to do a damn thing for you. It's her background. So she grew up. It's life on the carnival. So you go into the grocery store, and here Kathleen and I are walking around with the monkey girl, you know? And you know, she's like, again, she's like this tall, and she's shuffling around, and we're pushing the cart, but she's sort of shuffling around and picking some stuff up. And she finishes all up. We're up at checkout. And that poor checkout girl, oh jeez. I mean, it was obvious she had Pecilla in her line before, and she was not amused. And you know, so Pecilla gets up to the front, and she's like, oh Jesus. And you know, Priscilla's sitting there, and she's like doing this with the pocketbook, and she's, you know, and she's like, would you count out my money for me? And I sat there, and I thought, and I looked at her, and I said, Pecilla, I never touch anybody's money. And she's like, oh, okay. I was like, I'm not going to touch this woman's money. I'm not going to do that. That's nolle me tangere. Touch me not. I'm not doing it. So she pays for the food, get her back to the house, and she sort of like ambles up toward the house. And as she's ambling up, Kathleen and I are like, I mean, we've been worked, right? I called Johnny Mia, a banner painter. Some of you may know, or some of you are familiar with, I'm sure. I called Johnny afterwards because Johnny and I had gotten to be big buddies. And I was like, Johnny, I just spent the whole day with Pecilla. And he goes, you feel like the Stradivarius at the end of the concert, don't you? And I was like, oh yeah, you bet. And I saw Pecilla for every year I went down there. I'd get together with her. But there's a story she told me that to kind of wrap this, and then I'll take some questions from all of you. Her line was, and I had no idea about this to begin with, despite the fact that I've been working, you know, around the business for a number of years at that point. She said that on the last day of the season, boy, it's gonna be hard to get through. On the last day of the season, all the carnival people, it'd sweep the Midway. All the Gazunis, all the Rubes, all the Marks, gonna get them all off the Midway. It's gonna be 11, 12 o'clock at night, get them all out. It's last night, last show of the season. And what they would all do is, they would all parade around the Midway, basically entertaining each other, which they hadn't really done at any point in time during the season, because you don't get paid to entertain each other, you get paid to entertain the audience. And she said, the Hawaiian bands and all the small orchestras from the girls shows, they'd all parade around the Midway. And they'd play all those forbidden songs. It ain't gonna rain no more. There's no place like home. You don't tell somebody on the stage good luck, do you? You tell them break a leg. Because the last thing in the world you want to do is express any kind of hope, because you ain't likely going to have that satisfied. You'd be better off to go in expecting the worst, and then if it's better than that, oh, look at this, I'm in the money. So they'd all parade around the Midway, and they'd play all the forbidden songs. Because everybody there pretty much knew, come next season, I might not see you again. I might not see you again the next season. I might never see you again for the rest of my life. Or maybe it's just going to be a year before I see you, but still it's a year. And her line was, it was really sad. She said, but it was really happy too. And that's about the best way I could end with both her and Jeanie Tomaini. Yeah, it's a lot sad, but it's a lot happy too. And that's a wrap.
Ladies and gentlemen, come on, let's hear it for James Taylor. Mr. Taylor obviously knows what he's talking about. He also gets a beer for traveling farther than anybody else to be here tonight, assuming the mystery guest does not show up.
Oh, I couldn't beat that for a lot of money.
You want to take some questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions at all? Anything? I know you're still there. I can hear you breathing. God, I stunned them. Look at this. Or maybe somebody's got their hand up and I just don't see it.
Oh, can we put on the house lights? House lights.
Ah! Don't touch that blind. I'm going to get questions from. This is good. You see what these guys are doing? You can do that. No, yes.
Were you saying that Gibtown is mostly gone?
What's the line? There's not a lot of there anyway. It never has been.
Yeah.
When it's the off season, it's people everywhere. But when they're working, it's. In fact, what the real estate people down there do, I was going to say the sleazy people, the sleazy realtors in Florida, but that's sort of an oxymoronic expression. I shouldn't put it that way. Talk about self-contradiction. What they'll do is that they'll run people looking for property through in the summer and the spring and the early fall, when all that property is empty. Because these people have property like half a dozen acres or more where they work on their equipment during the off season. It's their work quarters. And in fact, they have, other than Los Angeles, they have the only, in the United States to my knowledge, they have the only other entertainment business zoning allowing them to operate 24/7, basically industrial, because they're building rides and they're working on their iron, as they call those rides, and building joints and the games and the grab joints, as they call them, where you get your food and stuff. That usually as you run to the Donikers, which is what they call the toilets. But yeah, they'll run people through Gibsonton in the off season. It's like, look at these enormous lawns. Look at it. And then come February, your ass is up all night with the guy arc welding not 30 feet from your bedroom. It's like buying property next to the airport that only operates for 4 months out of the year, and you don't know it when you're buying in. So yeah, it's that kind of mess. But there's been separate from that time of year when they're there's almost never anybody in Gibtown.
More questions? Let's take one from out there and then here.
What's your birthday?
I'm sorry?
What's your birthday?
That's the Russian human computer. Hey, tell them your birthday.
Oh, God. Don't ask me for my social, but I can give you my birthday. 11/25/50.
I'm sorry?
11/25/50.
Saturday. You were born on a Saturday. Check it on your stupid smartphone. November.
Actually, I was. Yes, I was.
You have a girlfriend?
Yes, I was. Next question.
You have a girlfriend? You have a girlfriend? Okay, what's the date of birth of your crazy ex-girlfriend?
Oh.
Next question.
I'll tell you that I am a born freak in 2 regards, and I can't make a goddamn cent off of either one of them.
Listen. I'm a stupid immigrant with poor knowledge of English language. Speak slowly.
No, I don't get that. Yeah, my little toes lay over the top of my foot, and my heart's in sideways, which I didn't find out until probably about 15 years ago when my doctor did an EKG. And I'm like, so this is great. So I'm a born freak and I can't make a damn dime off of it. This is
one more question.
Yes. Was it you?
How many volumes of Shocked and Amazed are there, and over what time period did you publish them?
Oh, Lord. It was supposed to have been an annual. Actually, it was supposed to have been a semi-annual, which turned into an annual, which turned into a periodical. It's been 9 volumes. We have volume 10 is going into production, and the first volume was in '95, and I published volume 9 a couple of years back. It's
coming out.
Yes, and it's going to be on banners, Sideshow Banners, whole volume.
Yeah.
So yes, Sideshow Banners. And for those of you who might not be aware, I just published the collector's edition, which is excerpts from the first 9 volumes in addition to 100 extra pages beyond that have never been in print before and will never be in print anywhere else but the collector's edition. If you go to shockedandamazed.com, you can get it. I will have copies up here in the next couple weeks too.
What's your favorite volume?
The Coney Island.
As a matter of fact, and you do need to know that will be the last volume I will ever publish like that, because God, it was a lot of work. Jeez, all those interviews, man, it was death. But yeah, it's a real fave.
Can we hear it one more time for James? So, you in the audience, you have to appreciate some of the foremost scholars of Sideshow are in the room here. James Taylor knows what he's talking about. We have a panel here. We have Xander Lovecraft. We have Bambi the Mermaid. We have Professor Marie Roberts. We have Executive Director of Coney Island USA, James Fitzsimmons. Gary Maggi, who runs Magic at Coney Island. Dr. Jeffrey Birnbaum, head of the Board of Directors of Coney Island USA. Travis Stewart, who wrote the book on any subject of popular culture. That man wrote the book. And Kate Gale, who's, I promise you, she's going to overwhelm you with her presentation. We are the experts, but you folks in the audience, you are going to make the decision which 5 people out of 10 people nominated get inducted into the Sideshow Hall of Fame. But before we start that, 2 items of quick business and then we will move on. First things first, for those of you filming, you're gonna have to re-edit this entire show because I forgot something at the beginning. So we're about to film something that you'll edit into the beginning. So house lights, please. Everyone in the room, please stand and take the Coney Carney pledge. Repeat after me. With it!
With it!
For it!
For it!
Never against it.
Never against it!
I declare this Congress of Curious People open for session 2019. You can sit down, we just needed to film that to edit. So now that we started the show, it's almost time for our first intermission. The way the rest of the evening is going to work, the experts are going to nominate 2 people in each category, but you, the audience, decide. You get to ask questions, you get to vote, you pick who gets in, and after each vote, you're all going to raise a beer and toast the person being inducted and down your beer, and over the course of the rest of the evening, you're gonna drink 5 beers. So I'm giving you an opportunity now to go to the bar, buy your first beer, hurry back, and we will begin. It's intermission.